Hello and welcome to WION Live Broadcast from Washington DC. I'm Nick Harper, and in this bulletin we'll get you a roundup on stories developing around the world. First up, the headlines. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi congratulates the nation for crossing 1 billion vaccinations and paid gratitude to the healthcare workers who worked to achieve this momentous feat. The United Nations sets up a special trust fund to provide urgently needed cash directly to the so-called people's economy in Afghanistan. The UN says the move aims to inject liquidity into Afghan households to help them survive the winter. Pakistani Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi is in Kabul to meet with senior Taliban leaders. Qureshi is said to hold discussions on bilateral matters, including the issue of Afghan soil being used by terror groups. Harvey Ali, a 25-year-old man who was arrested at the scene of the killing of British MP David Amess, has been charged with murder. The accused also faces a separate charge of preparing acts of terrorism. Pfizer-BioNTech's third dose of the vaccine against COVID-19 is 95.6% effective against symptomatic infection of the Delta variant of the virus, according to a study by its makers. And Bitcoin value skyrockets during trading, reaching a new high of over 66,000 US dollars per unit. Overall, the cryptocurrency has risen nearly 50% in the last 30 days.
India's mega vaccination drive marks yet another milestone. 1 billion vaccines administered across the nation. We told you how it all began.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi launched the world's biggest vaccination drive.
How we marked one milestone after another.
India will have nearly 120 million doses in June.
Catch all the latest updates on India's vaccine journey.
Biggest vaccination drive in the world, India today administered 1 billion vaccine doses.
India's mega vaccination drive. WION. Continuing coverage.
Well, it's a big day for India's vaccination drive. 9 months after launching the biggest vaccination drive in the world, India today administered 1 billion vaccine doses. On your screens right now is India's live vaccination tracker. Well, and as you can see, the number keeps increasing every second, and it's well over 1 billion now. The country is celebrating the historic milestone in a number of ways. The national flag will be unfurled at Red Fort in the capital. Monuments across the country will be lit up, and the achievement will be announced at bus stops and villages all the way across India. Prime Minister Narendra Modi congratulated the country, saying that India today scripted history. The Prime Minister also visited a government hospital in New Delhi, where he paid tribute to all the doctors, nurses and COVID warriors who've helped achieve this momentous feat.
और किस तरह से इसमें इजाफा किया जा सकता है इसकी भी जानकारी ली। आज ऐसा नहीं करना चाहिए। इनकी लौकी का पहले तो आर्थिक तो ये
आज 21 अक्टूबर 2021 का ये दिन इतिहास में दर्ज हो गया है। भारत ने अब से कुछ दूर पहले ही 100 करोड़ वैक्सीन डोज का आंकड़ा पार कर लिया है। मैं देश की वैक्सीन मैन्युफैक्चरिंग कंपनियां, वैक्सीन ट्रांसपोर्टेशन में जुड़े कर्मयोगियां, वैक्सीन लगाने में जुटे हेल्थ सेक्टर के प्रोफेशनल्स, सभी का खुले मन से, हृदय से बहुत बहुत आभार व्यक्त करता हूं।
The World Health Organization congratulated the Prime Minister, scientists and health workers of India for their efforts to protect the vulnerable groups from COVID and for achieving vaccine equity targets. This landmark comes despite the country facing huge supply bottlenecks, storage challenges and a fair amount of vaccine hesitancy in the initial period. India reached the 1 billion milestone in just about 275 days. For over 3 months this year, the country was in the midst of the worst phase of the pandemic, one that crippled its health system. The first vaccine dose in India was administered on January the 16th this year. India then took 85 days to touch the 1 million vaccination mark. It crossed the 500 million mark on August the 6th. 74% of India's adult population has now received at least one dose. 31% are fully vaccinated. Despite the phenomenal work in speeding up vaccinations in the last 2 months, there's still a steep climb ahead. India is aiming to fully vaccinate its entire adult population by the end of this year. This means an additional 900 million doses have to be administered by the 31st of December. Next, to further boost the country's immunity against the coronavirus, the United States Food and Drug Administration has authorised a mix and match strategy for people who require a booster shot of the COVID vaccine. After approving a booster shot of Pfizer last month, the FDA has now approved the same for Moderna and Johnson & Johnson. A single dose of any of the three can now be used after completing primary vaccinations with a different COVID vaccine. People who've received 2 Moderna shots and are 65 or older or at high risk for COVID can now receive a booster shot. All adults who received the one-shot J&J vaccine more than 2 months ago are also eligible for a booster. Now that the US has authorised it, the mix and match strategy could possibly become more common worldwide. Studies have shown that mixing 2 profoundly different vaccines actually produces more antibodies than 2 shots of the same vaccine. It also offers a life-saving flexibility in countries where COVID vaccines are in short supply. If supplies of one vaccine, for example, runs out, they could switch to another and still get strong immunity. Or if a country has extra doses of the vaccine on hand, it can be used as a booster shot. But despite the Biden government working to shore up immunisation, vaccine hesitancy in the country poses a big challenge still. Not only does it risk the health of the rest of the population, but it also allows millions of vaccines in the United States to go to waste. Well, months after he was banned from Twitter and Facebook, Donald Trump has announced plans to launch his own social media network called Truth Social. His latest move is likely to further strengthen speculation that Trump is gearing up for a second presidential run in 2024. Trump has been battling tech giants and claims that they wrongfully censored him. The former US president was banned from Twitter and Facebook after the January 6th Capitol Hill riots.
After being silenced by Facebook and Twitter for months, former U.S. President Donald Trump said Wednesday he'll be launching his own social media platform, Truth Social. USA! USA! Trump was kicked out of several social networks following the January 6 Capitol Hill riots. In a press release on Wednesday, he said his new app is being created to, quote, fight back against the big tech companies of Silicon Valley, which he says silences opposing voices in America. Truth Social will be launched through a new company, a merger between Trump Media and Technology Group, or TMTG, and Digital World Acquisition Group. That's a special purpose acquisition company, already listed on the NASDAQ. The merger will allow TMTG to also be listed on the stock exchange, as well as give it access to Digital World's cash, raised from its IPO. According to the press release, that cash amounts to $293 million, assuming none of that firm's shareholders choose to redeem their shares. The impending deal values Trump's company at $875 million, but the merger is not yet complete. Both companies have said that would depend on shareholder redemptions not exceeding a minimum cash requirement. The press release said a beta version of Truth Social will be available to invited guests next month. It also said that in the future, TMTG intends to launch a streaming service featuring non-woke entertainment programming, as well as a cloud service which it hopes will rival Google and Amazon.
Reasserting a bid to deter Moscow, NATO's defence ministers have agreed on a new master plan to defend against any potential Russian attack. The strategy, which remains confidential for now, goes beyond the existing defence plans. It aims to prepare the Allies for any attack in the Baltic Sea and Baltic Sea regions, including from nuclear weapons. Russia has denied any warlike intentions and has said that it is NATO that risks destabilising Europe. US officials and NATO diplomats, however, say that the new master plan is needed as Russia develops advanced weapons systems and deploys troops and equipment closer to the borders of NATO countries.
Russia's destabilizing activities in and around the Black Sea reflect its ambitions to regain a dominant position in the region and to prevent the realization of a Europe that's whole, free, and at peace. We are currently looking at our force posture and where our resources are deployed around the globe. I think our posture in the region continues to present a credible threat against Russia, and it enables NATO forces to operate more effectively should deterrence fails.
In response, Moscow has warned NATO that any move towards Ukraine's membership in the bloc will have consequences. Earlier this week, in a visit to Ukraine, the US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said that Washington supports Kiev's aspirations to join the transatlantic alliance and that no country could veto such a move. In May this year, Russia amassed some 100,000 troops on its border with Ukraine. That was the highest Russian deployment since the country annexed Crimea back in 2014. Last month, Russia used new combat robots in military drills with its former Soviet ally, Belarus. The NATO allies are also developing Indo-Pacific strategy. They're seeking to boost their presence in the Indo-Pacific and counter China's rising military power. NATO also seeks to deploy more ships to keep the sea routes open. This comes just days after reports surfaced of China conducting not one but two tests of new hypersonic weapons. The London-based Financial Times reported that Beijing launched the nuclear-capable hypersonic glide weapon in July and August. Next, Netflix employees are storming out of their own offices in protest. And we'll tell you why. On October the 5th, the streaming company launched a special show with American comedian Dave Chappelle. The release has brought scathing criticism, though, from viewers and even from its own employees. The show, named The Closer, is being branded as transphobic. About 100 people gathered outside the studio complex in Los Angeles, claiming that these kinds of content can fuel future violence and even killings.
I think that his jokes were very transphobic. I'm very disappointed in a lot of our cis queer community that did not find what Dave Chappelle said problematic. Honestly, I'm just tired of the whole trans experience having to be the variable for these networks to use to really drive in money and to drive in ratings while our trans community is hurting.
Protesters are aiming to hold Netflix accountable for providing a platform to a show that allegedly laughs at the expense of the trans community. The streaming company has been urged to repair its relations with both staff and its audience.
I thought it was important to shift the focus to the people that signed the check, because Dave Chappelle doesn't sign his own checks, Netflix does. And so if we have companies like Netflix who aren't listening to their employees, who are forcing their employees to participate in their own oppression, that's unacceptable.
Most, which is the name of Netflix's official LGBTQ group, tweeted that they can't always control the content that the platform puts out, hinting at alienation from the company and from the show's ideologies. In support of the protests, the group later tweeted, "Be right back, we are walking out." Netflix has refused to take down the special, arguing that it supports the creative freedom of its artists, even when the material is controversial. The comedian, Chappelle, has also laughed off the backlash, slamming the internet's cancel culture. Some even gathered in support of the show, claiming jokes and comedy are central to the American experience. Netflix has been mired in controversies recently. Employees and viewers have accused the platform of propagating hate speech against marginalised sex. They're demanding clear disclaimers with content like Dave Chappelle's show. The company's been urged to hire trans and non-binary people for executive roles and also create a fund to support the talent of these groups.
Trans lives matter. Trans lives matter. Trans lives matter. Trans lives matter.
Huddled around cooking fires as winter looms in Bosnia, refugees are risking beatings and humiliation from Croatian police in the desperate hope of a new life in the European Union. Most of the refugees at camps at the Bosnian border are from war-ravaged Afghanistan. But even after escaping poverty and war back home, their lives have not changed so far for the better.
They left behind their war-ravaged land and a life full of uncertainty, hoping for a better and brighter future. But at the EU border, lives of these refugees are no better.
I tried three times, but first time we passed 34 kilometers. We were to Croatia, but they catch us. And after, first of all, they take all phones from us, and after they take phones, they kick. They shock, and they using by stick.
Refugees on the Bosnia border are risking beatings and humiliation from Croatian police. At this ramshackle camp near the northwest Bosnian border, a group comprising of mostly Afghan refugees is hoping to cross into the European Union. Some of them have been on the road for years, others left as Taliban took over. All their attempts of crossing the border have been foiled and their hopes dashed. Searching for a new life, all they have stumbled upon is the Croatian police clubs and pointed guns at the gates to the EU territory.
All of the time, everywhere is police, everywhere. We choose why people in Croatia cannot see, because they will call to police and police give fine for them.
As 5 days before, I'm going game Croatia stay as police as 5 kilometers inside Croatia as police stop, as come back is bring in the border, and another police as check. I have 400 euro, all my euro is take, and phone and cover bank as no gift back for me, and betting is going back inside Bosnia.
Activists are voicing concern over the violence against refugees. They say the behavior by the Croatian police is contrary to the European legislation.
do Bosne. Tako da je uistinu zapravo pitanje.
The real question that needs to be raised is whether the European Union approves this practice and what will be done to stop the violent and illegal behavior, because it is contrary to the European legislation on the matter. The current EU policy is pushing these people into the hands of human traffickers because they have no other possibility to reach a safe area than to use the service of this grey zone, which is tragic because the EU talks about fighting the traffickers yet makes it happen.
As a humanitarian crisis looms over Afghanistan, Europe fears a repeat of 2015 refugee crisis and a potential influx into the bloc. In 2015 and 16, EU encountered a large-scale refugee crisis given the conflict in Syria. Over 1.2 million people applied for asylum that year. European leaders have already spoken of a need to formulate a plan in response to refugees from Afghanistan. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Well, that's all we've got time for on today's WION Live Broadcast from Washington, D.C. I'm Nick Harper, and for more global news and updates, stay tuned to WION World is One.
Many other. This is right, Arab.